Welcome this week at Missouri Politics. This week we are on the very beautiful grounds of the Missouri Governor's Mansion in Jefferson City, Missouri, and we are joined by the 57th Governor of the great state of Missouri, Governor Mike Parson. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, good morning, Scott. Good to have you on.
Let me just start with the first question. I think everybody had when they first heard about this. How you feeling? How's the First Lady feeling?
Well, you know what? I feel fine. I've had no symptoms at all, and the First Lady is fine. We plan on being back next Monday. We're going to take a couple extra days. It's a weekend, sure. So we're just going to stay isolated for a couple more days, just extra. But come Monday, it's hitting the ground running for the rest of the year.
So what I wanted to ask is, there's a lot of folks. I mean, everybody in the state knows you, knows your wife. How did when you first found out that the First Lady was sick? What symptoms did she have? What made her decide to get tested? Kind of walk folks through the process of, okay, I've got something that's not right. I don't feel just right. How do you decide to get tested, and then what happens after?
Well, I think multiple fronts, Scott. One, we were in the hayfield just a couple of weeks ago, not too long ago, that we're doing that. So in rural Missouri, we know pollen's up, we know ragweed's out there and all of that we're going through. Teresa has allergies, and you know she got a cough out of that, but that's normal for us. Mm-hmm. So that went on for a couple of days, and then what we really realized is she got up the morning that we were tested, and she had a fever. And at that point, I basically just told me and the First Lady talked about it, you know, just the position we were in, says, well, you know, we just need to get tested. We need to get you tested. And whatever
Governor,
it is,
what was that fever? What was that fever that folks that made you concerned enough to get tested? What was it, 99 something, or where was she at there?
Yeah, it was right there around a 99 to 100 is what it was. Okay. And she got up, and as soon as that happened, that was the second trigger, I want to say. But just because you have a cough or something like that doesn't necessarily mean you got COVID-19. Again, it's a combination of things. Doesn't mean you don't. I mean, like me, I didn't know I had it. So when Teresa became tested, you know, at that point, you know, we both decided, you know, I mean, we've thought through this before. We knew our schedules. We knew we're out there. We knew that chance was there. And if it did, we're going to be like, you know, over 100,000 other people that has it, that we know has it.
Every Missourian that's got to go to work tomorrow, they have to make a decision that they could catch this virus and try to take precautions like has been advised, but you have to make a decision to leave your house, and there's some risk with that. What did you automatically, once she tested positive, did you automatically get a test?
I did. Once she had that little rapid test where she tested positive before the second official one happened, you know, we said, okay, you got to be tested. And I mean, again, we were prepared for that, though. We pretty well knew what that outcome. And then once I tested positive, which was no surprise after she did, we just took action right away. We were on two different time clocks scheduled, so we had to deal with that, you know. But literally, we listened to the doctors, give us advice. She went back to Bolivar. I stayed here, did my work schedule, kind of keep an eye on me for a few days. But I'm just thankful. We're both very thankful. We're blessed. So many people, so many good people across the state with well wishes and their prayers. And I just want to thank them for all that.
I've been impressed from a political observer standpoint. I've been happy as a Missourian to see the videos you've done every day. It really does look like you've been very lucky and that you haven't had any symptoms and really haven't been impacted by having this virus except for staying away from folks.
Yeah, and you know what, Scott, for me, it was another day of work. You know, you was just confined to a certain area, which was the hardest thing for me because I've never been isolated for 10 days in a row in my life. So, but again, we all know in the virtual arena that we're in, the conference calls, we just started packing the schedule with that, and really just things went on every day as normal as far as for the most people viewing how the governor's office ran.
All right, so I think there was, I remember all the COVID bros were all upset about school starting. There was going to be, it was going to be end of time, right? And then some schools started playing football. The Liberators, I checked, at Bolivar are 4-1 this season so far. I think most folks have to, if you're a fair-minded person, you've let local districts make their own local decisions. I think so far, not that everything's perfect, but it's been a pretty good return to school considering the situations for Missouri students.
Yeah, Scott, you know, from the beginning, we took a balanced approach to this, trying to figure out how do you make the best policy for the entire state, not just one city, not just one county. How do you really do that? And it's difficult to do. And there's not an easy answer for it, and there's not a perfect answer for it. But one thing about the school systems we knew from listening to the experts that people refer to all the time, almost every infectious disease doctor we talked to, every pediatrician that we talked to said that kids need to be back in school. and that was the best place for them to be, because for not being in school, there's a lot of underlying effects that you have to deal with that also. When you look at our state, over 900,000 kids in this state go to school every day. 465,000 of them are on free and reduced lunches. So one, if you don't send them to school, how are you going to take care of them, truly take care of them? Not everybody has the advantages of some people that's fortunate to have money and fortunate to have all the things they need at home. A lot of kids don't have that. 125,000 kids are special needs kids. What do you do with that? And the thing that nobody talked about at all, and a lot of it, because everybody didn't, some people didn't want school to start, but I'm going to say the vast majority did.
Yeah.
We had summer schools all over the state, Scott, with no problems whatsoever. I mean, one school district I know I went to, they had 500 kids in summer school. They had no incidents. These superintendents and college presidents around the state of Missouri are there for a reason for the most part. Most of them are doing a very good job, and they want the kids back in school. Parents want the kids back in school. And 85% of our schools in the state of Missouri are in-class schools right now. 85% of them, 75% of the students across the state are back.
And I think some of the folks that want to chirp on Twitter, or maybe they're on an editorial board somewhere, not everybody in the state lives in Chesterfield with a nanny. I mean, my parents, if they had to work so that I could eat, and if my grandma couldn't watch me, there was going to be nobody there to watch me. Real life is different, and it doesn't happen in a vacuum. And if kids aren't in school, they're going to have to be somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's great if you have the opportunity to sit at home and you can draw a paycheck somehow, but not everybody can do that. I mean, and the reality of it is most people want to go to work. And exactly right. What do you do with 465,000 kids?
Yeah.
You go to a little town in Butler County where you're from, or Polk County where I'm from, there is no daycare centers. There is no place to take your kids. They either got to go home by themselves, or like you said, both parents are working, or you take them to the grandparents. As we know now, that's maybe not the best scenario either, but because of the vulnerability of those grandparents. So again, there's no easy answers, but again, I think all the evidence would show kids need to be back in the schools. And you know what? There's going to be kids, just like these college students, they're going to test positive. That's going to happen, and we just got to be prepared for that. And I think the school systems are.
I was I guess I wasn't surprised, but I noticed that when you tested positive, there were some folks that had a little, as we Germans would call it, schadenfreude. They seemed almost happy, like it somehow validated them. Were you a little surprised by the glee of folks like, say the Star editorial board, or some folks that almost used it as a way to validate their opinion that you had been infected with this virus?
Yeah, the whole bottom line is the Post-Dispatch, the Kansas City Star are two political agendas on the far liberal side of it. I mean, I don't even think they represent the core of the Democrat Party anymore. The articles they say, they're just totally biased in the articles they wrote. I'm sure they would have liked for it to have been a lot worse for me, truth be known. But the reality,
look that way.
What they say, it's a shame the way they conduct themselves, and when you compare what happened to me and Teresa, and you look at the Virginia governor, and those two things happen a day apart. And if you look how biased the media is and how they represented that, I remember the Kansas City Star, their headlines were the anti-mask governor. From day one, we've asked people to wear a mask from day one. But look, that's politics. They're going to do this from now to the election, no matter what the issue is. And frankly, they're going to put the propaganda out there. They're not going to be able to back their stories up. And they're just untruthful about 90% of the time.
Well, I do think if you've been a Missouri Republican, you've observed politics, they get a little more than normal about an election. You don't have to look hard to guess who they're pulling for. But let me ask you, what's going to be coming out of the Parson campaign in the last 4 weeks? I guess tomorrow you're back out on the trail doing stuff?
Yeah, we will be. Tomorrow we'll be back. We'll be back to work schedule, and then we'll probably go into political events tomorrow night. And we're just going to start, we're just going to double up on our schedule. I think there's two things that are important. I'm going to have my work schedule I want to do, and then I'm going to have my campaign schedule, and still have to do both of them. But look, I've worked hard all my life. The way I look at it is I got 30 days, whatever it takes to get the job done in 30 days, I will. But I will tell you, it will be an intense schedule from now till November. We'll be on the ground. You'll see a lot of us around the state of Missouri.
Yeah, I figure you've been bouncing off the walls in that mansion, but old Still Shippy and Aaron Willard, they're gonna make up for that the next 3 or 4 weeks, right?
You know what? I think they're both just can't wait for that day to happen. But I'm thankful to have those guys really on my team on the political side, and what Aaron does as the chief of staff is just remarkable every day. I just got great people, Scott. I tell my staff every day, it's never about being the best governor. It's never about being the best sheriff. It's always about making the people around you better. That's how you become successful as a leader, and I learned that a long time ago.
Before we let you get back to it, I want to ask you, the debate everyone watched, it did not really feel like there was a lot of Midwestern, a lot of Missouri values and treating people the way a Missourian would in that debate. It was a little surprising, and I wondered myself, while I was watching it, what you thought of watching that.
You know what I would really like to see is anytime you're in a debate, I think people want to see, what is your vision? What have you done? What is your vision for tomorrow? I think those are the important things that we need to have opportunity to say. I look forward to the debate with my opponent on Friday night, and to be able to go out there, toe to toe, but really just go out there and say what you have done, what you will be doing, and your successes. And I hope we both stay on that message, because I think it's going to be the only time people are going to get an opportunity to see us on a stage together. But every candidate ought to go up there and be able to say their vision and their belief in what they stand for. And I think that's a lot more important than that. Who's up on one, on each other.
You're the governor. I'm just a simple hillbilly. But it would just shock me to no end if the debate between you and Auditor Galloway turned into anything like what we saw between the president and the former vice president. Both of you are Missouri folks. It would shock me if anything near that unfolded Friday evening.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. I'm just going to tell you right now.
And a testament to her as well.
Yeah, the one thing I do is I respect people. I don't care whether they may not believe me, and her might not have the same views, but I'm not going to go up there and disrespect her. That's just not what I do. I'll point out the differences all day long, what I've done and what I'm going to do, and what she's done and what she's going to do. But I'm not going to go up there and personally attack her or anyone else. It's just not the way I operate.
Well, Governor, thank you so much for making the time, and we all hope you stay healthy and safe the last 4 weeks of the campaign.
All right, thanks, Scott. Good to talk to you again. Keep up the good work.
Sir. That was Governor Parson. We'll be right back with our Opinion Maker panel here on the beautiful grounds of the Governor's Gardens here in Jeff City. But first, I want you to go to showmissouri.com. History of Missouri, one county at a time. We learned all about Lafayette County, one of the most beautiful cities in the world, Lexington. They still have the cannonball scar from the Civil War still on the courthouse there. So go to showmissouri.com. And also, big announcement, next week we'll be back airing on KRCG here in Jefferson City. Sunday mornings, you can watch This Week in Missouri Politics. You don't have to watch it online. You can watch it directly there. KRCG here in Jefferson City. We'll be back on This Week in Missouri Politics. We'll be right back with our Opinion Maker panel after this.
I've always protected and served Missouri, but Jill Shoup has a disturbing pattern of siding with criminals. Shoup defended criminal illegal immigrants and voted against tougher laws for child sex offenders. Now, radical defund the police organizations are backing her. Jill Shoup isn't on our side. Ann Wagner stands with law enforcement, partnering with us to bring dangerous criminals to justice. Ann Wagner will keep Missouri safe.
I'm Ann Wagner. I'm endorsed by our local police and firefighters, and I approve this message.
Your energy needs are changing. That's why at Ameren, Missouri, we're not waiting on the future. We're building it with the Smart Energy Plan, advancing thousands of projects across the state, helping reduce emissions through cleaner energy sources, boost reliability with self-healing equipment, and better withstand storms with new composite poles. Moving Missouri forward and bringing us all a little closer together. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Mike Parson served in law enforcement for 22 years. A former sheriff, Parson is tough on crime. Governor Parson is standing up for victims, investing in better mental health services, and cracking down on violent crime and drugs. Governor Parson's anti-crime initiatives have led to the arrests of hundreds of violent criminals and gang members. A former sheriff, a conservative, tough-on-crime governor. Mike Parson is making Missouri families safer.
The Defund the Police movement is a real threat to public safety and Missouri families. I'm Eric Schmidt. As your Attorney General, I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with law enforcement to put violent criminals behind bars. That's why I've launched the Safer Streets Partnership with federal prosecutors in Missouri to give stiffer sentences to violent felons. That's already resulted in over 300 charges being filed.
Eric Schmidt, Missouri's tough-on-crime law and order Attorney General.
Welcome back to Week in Missouri Politics from the grounds of the Governor's Mansion here in Jefferson City. Opinion Maker panel time, joined by Eric Bohl of the Missouri Farm Bureau. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Brad Pollitt from Pettis
Good to be
County.
here.
Welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me.
The editor of the Missouri Times,
Thanks for
Kaitlyn
having
Schallhorn.
me.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And the best dressed lobbyist
Thank you.
anywhere in this fall in Missouri, Brian Grace with Nexus Group. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay, I was reading your
Thanks,
Twitter, the debate. I mean, yes, everybody said it's embarrassing and all this, and I understand that. What did you actually think of how it's going to impact any politics here in Missouri, like in the 2nd Congressional or the 15th Senatorial?
Yeah. Well, let me start by saying this. If you're watching This Week in Missouri Politics, you're a fan of the political theater. If that's the case, you enjoyed that debate. It was great theater. I enjoyed it a lot. As far as its impact on the race, I think it might have energized both bases, and it probably hurt Republicans in suburban districts. I think that's the part of the state and the country where Donald Trump is suffering the most. Yep. And I don't think those suburban voters would have reacted well to his behavior in the debate.
I've seen some suburban districts have suffered with Trump. Now, look, that's going off polling. The last time they polled Donald Trump, he overperformed. I will tell you, though, I do enjoy political theater. There was something that made me feel uneasy about the vitriol, and a lot of it came from the president. Vitriol, and a lot of it came from the president.
Than usual. Yeah. And when you watch that, for me it was hard to watch just from my teacher background came out, and when people are talking over each other, that's just hard for me to watch too much. I think in my district, Pettis County and Eastern Johnson, I think most people have their minds made up. I don't believe that debate had any effect on that.
I kind of agree for the most part. I don't know that if you're watching that debate, you're truly an undecided voter, but I do think just the coverage of it. I mean, people were talking about it on the water cooler the next day. I'm not sure to maybe a person in Missouri's swing areas in the suburbs, I don't know that did a Republican any favors.
It certainly didn't, and you're already seeing fallout from the debate among his advisors and some of his supporters. There's a great piece in Politico that interviewed dozens of his advisors, and they're frustrated with how he came across. They're frustrated that he didn't just sit back and let the vice president kind of back himself into a hole. Yeah. And I think that's going to be things that they have to talk to him about.
Joe Biden can't have a debate gaffe if you don't let him get a word in edgewise.
Exactly.
Eric, I got to say, to me, I understand Donald Trump. I think some of it's funny. I think some of it's good politics, obviously. But there was something just in my rural Missouri, Midwestern, hillbilly gut. I didn't like seeing the president act that way.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're seeing from Missourians, too, from all stripes, is even his biggest supporters, a lot of them are still saying, I really could do without some of that stuff. Yeah. And I think that Kaitlyn's exactly right. You didn't give Vice President Biden enough time to make any gaffes. And if you
a guy that
give
makes
him
a few
some,
gaffes.
Yeah, if you give him some time, he will make some. I think that my takeaway was really just that it's probably not going to change a single soul's vote. But what it might do is depress turnout, because a lot of people watched it and just said, I don't want to have anything to do with this stuff anymore, and we're just sad about the whole situation. And that may end up playing to Trump's benefit in some strange, convoluted way.
Let's talk about COVID. That's touching every part of all of our lives in different ways. In some places more than others. But as far as politics goes, I think everybody was keyed up when kids went back to school. I would say most folks in your district wanted their kids to go back to school. You had some folks that predicted doom and gloom, and this is going to be the end of days. Those predictions haven't happened. I mean, I'm not saying no one's gotten sick because school's restarted, but the doomsday scenarios haven't unfolded.
No, and I believe that it's just so important that we get kids back in those buildings and get them back with their teachers and get them back with their administrators. And online learning is good for a limited number of students, and but in-building learning is what we've done in Missouri, and that's been our success. And we have students, we'll have one or two get it, and then we have to quarantine a number, and I know there's been some discussion on how we can keep those kids that don't have it in school, and I think we need to figure that out.
Brian Grace, there's no easy answer on COVID. No matter what you do, there's rational people can make an argument the other side. Right. I do think, though, letting kids go back to school in Missouri has been overall successful.
I agree with Representative Pollitt. It's imperative that we get the children, especially the younger children, back in school. First, second, third graders cannot sit in front of a screen all day and keep focused on learning. They need to be in a classroom, they need to be with their teachers. And so we need to find a safe way. I know in districts like yours, kids are in school. Where I live in Columbia, the public schools are not in school. We need to start that transition and get those children back in the classrooms.
And John, you're going to look at, whenever you talk about COVID, somebody's going to find a statistic and say, but the cases, the numbers, the deaths, I think probably that's not made up, but it's like the guy that lives right here. Some people get sick with it and they're fine.
Right, and I think too it doesn't help that there's the White House reports that's coming out every week, and it's highlighting Missouri as in a red zone, and we've got, speaking of those statistics, about 50 counties in Missouri that are considered red and another 20 that are yellow. So you are seeing more of a rise in cases in Missouri, but I think you kind of have to look at if there's a rise in cases, is there a rise also in hospitalizations, people who are symptomatic or asymptomatic? What does that actually look like for Missouri? Like, what does that actually look like for Missouri?
I've always wondered why, on an issue like gun rights, people fight tooth and nail on every single point. But I do remember we sat on this show and talked about flattening the curve once. Now nobody even talks about that. It's you have to stay at your house until there's a vaccine. And I think there is a trade-off, right? There's a trade-off to everything you do. But I do think that the schools have not been the biggest contributor to whatever the problems are.
Whatever you think of that too, it's just unsustainable to sit at home and not be able to go to a job or not be able to go to school, whether you don't have access to internet or just you have to go out and see people.
Eric Bohl, I think in rural Missouri, if it's personally affected you, like everything, you're going to take this far more seriously. I don't think if the governor would have issued a mask order in March and left it in place, people in Dexter would still be fine. Now on Delmar Avenue in St. Louis, I'm sure they would. Sure. They like the government. They take orders from the government very well. Folks in Dexter ain't too keen on that.
Well, I think that you're right, that the one-size-fits-all approach really doesn't work. And that's what I think we're seeing more of as we go through this process and we evolve as to how we're combating it, is communities are now able to turn a little bit more when they see a rise in cases. They put in a little more restrictions. Like Brian was saying, I live in Columbia as well, and my kids are in Columbia Public Schools, so they're at home right now, but they're having the cases drop, so now they're transitioning, trying to find a way to come back. And being flexible is what we really think is important in rural Missouri. We want to have the local decisions being made by based on the local statistics, not the one-size-fits-all for the whole state. The one-size-fits-all for the whole state.
Superintendent, you have to make these decisions. There's a big back and forth in Kansas City and St. Louis. They don't go to school anymore in class to a large extent, but they want to play football. And in St. Louis, they finally just started going to other counties to play. They've been doing that in Jackson County. If you were a superintendent right now, would you have the football team out there?
I absolutely would. I think that we really have to look at the big picture in all of this. And you know, all the research says that human interaction is so important for mental health development. Yep. And these kids, they need to be with their friends, they need to be on the athletic fields, they need to be competing, they need to be kids. And when we look at the educational drop of what's happened over the last 6 months of the students that left in March and come back 6 months later, and where they were in March and where they're at now, it's imperative that these kids get back with their friends.
Brian, let me ask you, there's talk, nobody monitors this closer than you. There's a lot of parts of our life are impacted by not having a COVID liability law, a law that would shield some folks from some reasonable things to deal if somebody contracts COVID in their business. Is that going to happen?
It's a good question. It needs to happen. It needs to happen quickly. If we don't do it in a special session, it's not going to happen until the regular session. It won't become law without an emergency clause until next August 28th, when hopefully we're past the worst of COVID. And at that point, that law won't do those small businesses much good.
The last special session was
much good.
A little colorful. To me, I think that maybe cloud having another one about COVID.
Special sessions from a governor's perspective need to be prearranged, right?
Yes.
The House and the Senate leadership need to be on the same page as the governor, and there needs to be a plan to get in and get out quickly. That didn't happen last time. It led to a PQ in the Senate, which is going to have ramifications going forward, and that is overshadowing, it's got to be overshadowing the governor's decision whether or not to reconvene the legislature.
We can't talk about anything right now. 4 weeks away from an election, talk about politics. The man that lives on these grounds contracts COVID. You know, I initially thought, let's say the conventional wisdom, this is a 7 to 9 point race. He's going to lose a few points over this. But I've been pretty impressed. The daily videos have been something I think other campaigns will copy around the country. I don't know that's going to be that big a liability partly because how they've handled it.
Yeah, I agree with you with the videos. I think that was definitely necessary. You know, people are scared still, and it does reassure you to see the governor, especially a governor who's tested positive, to come out and stand before people and look fine and act fine, and it gives you some sense of reassurance. And I also think that it probably was a saving grace for Governor Parson that another governor, the Virginia governor, tested positive at the very same time, and he's one who has shut down his state and had statewide mask mandates.
Them headlines read a little different for that Democrat in Virginia. A little different. Representative, you're around public. You're a public figure. You don't want to ever have an infection at all. You don't want to have COVID. But I think, it was bound to happen to a lot of folks in public life. I think he's handled it pretty well.
Yeah, I think the governor's done a fantastic job, and the First Lady, just being transparent on the whole process, and like you said, the videos and whatnot, and I don't perceive this hurting him.
Prediction time. Where do you think this race is?
Prediction time.
There's a debate coming this Friday, but going into that debate, my guess is this is still around a 6 to 8 point race. What do you think it is?
I agree. I still think that Governor Parson has a pretty substantial lead, and I don't expect that to go away, even with the changes in the presidential race. The way that has been trending with with the debate that just happened. I don't think that the governor is really going to suffer due to Donald Trump.
Give me a prediction. Where's it at right now?
I think that if rural Missouri votes like they did when he ran for lieutenant governor, I think he's in really good shape.
Give me a prediction. What does this race at percentage point wise?
As someone who covered the 2020 presidential, I hate making predictions, but I would say that I would have to predict he comes out on top.
What do you think this race is at?
I'm going to counter the conventional wisdom a little bit. I think the race is tighter than what a lot of us had assumed even a week ago. I think it's in the mid-single digits.
That debate's not going to help, and the presidential debate's
The presidential debate's not going to help, and the battle is over the suburbs, and we're going to see a lot of national money flow into the 2nd Congressional, and that's going to bolster Democrat turnout. The Republicans are going to have to make up those margins in the rest of the state. Rest of the state.
I'd say Missouri farmers, because they've got great weather for a great harvest.
Great weather to do the show. Great harvest.
Well, not because you invited me here, but I think you won the week with your editorial on some people trying to make hay with the governor and the First Lady, and that's just wrong. And so I appreciate that editorial.
Very honored, Representative. Who won the week?
I would say Wendy Doyle and United We, which is the formerly known as the Women's Foundation. They rebranded this week with a big event, and they're expanding their footprint nationally, not just here in Missouri and Kansas. Nationally, not just here in Missouri and Kansas.
Who won the week?
I think Missourians looking for affordable housing won the week. Within the last week, the Missouri Housing Development Commission announced it's going to start for the first time in about 3 years accepting applications for state low-income housing tax credits, thanks largely to the leadership of Governor Parson and some of our other statewide elected officials. So I'm looking forward to that.
Big deal for Missouri.
So I'm looking forward to that.
I'm going to say the folks that are doing the No on 3 campaign, I know a lot of folks thought it was going to be a little tough. You had to go, Plastic Clean Missouri, you got to defend it. Just from a politics standpoint, the ads came out, they're outstanding. We hope you will join us next week from here in mid-Missouri on This Week in Missouri Politics when we debut on KRCG Channel 13. We'll see you then. Channel 13. We'll see you then.
Sponsored by the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts, Spire, and Sterling Bank.